Auctioned off by her own father, a quiet widower bought her freedom, and gave her his name. The twin sons of ardent nine were low in the sky, turning the dust in the air into a soft orange haze. Evening always made the frontier town look almost beautiful, like it was painted instead of built. But the beauty never lasted. When the light faded, the truth returned: rusted metal roofs, patched power lines, tired faces, and a silence that felt heavy. People gathered in the settlement square anyway. They came because something was happening, and on a rough world, any event could become a kind of entertainment. The square sat between the water office and the trading hall. A wooden platform had been built there, fresh boards nailed onto older supports. It stood higher than the crowd, like a stage made for watching. Mara stood at the edge of the platform with her hands close to her sides. She did not shake. She did not beg. She kept her face calm, like she had practiced being calm for years. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her, but she refused to look at them. She stared past the crowd at the red horizon, where the desert stretched out like an ocean of sand. Behind her, her father spoke in quick, nervous words to the broker. He was a small man with sharp shoulders and a face that always looked angry, even when he was not. His shirt was clean, but his boots were worn thin. He kept wiping his palms on his pants as if he could wipe away his fear. Mara had heard him talk about debt for months. Debt to the mining company, debt to traders, debt to the fuel syndicate. He had tried to hide it, but she had seen the warning notices, the locked accounts, the heated calls at night. Every bad decision he made seemed to land on her shoulders. Still, she had not believed it would come to this. The broker stepped forward with a small metal case. Inside the case was a contract chip, blinking green. The broker held it up so everyone could see. The crowd leaned in like people do when they smell profit. "This is legal transfer of guardianship," the broker announced. "The terms are clear and recognized by settlement authority. The new guardian assumes responsibility. The debt will be settled." Mara's father nodded too fast. Mara kept her eyes on the horizon. The words sounded clean, like paper and law, but she knew what it meant. Someone else would decide where she lived. Someone else would decide what she did tomorrow and the day after that. Her life would be moved like cargo from one place to another. In the crowd, a few men spoke loudly, joking in a careless way. Others stayed quiet, watching like they were waiting to see what kind of deal this would become. There were women, too, standing in small groups, faces hard, arms crossed. On Ardent Nine, people learned not to show too much emotion. Emotion could be used against you. Myra listened to the voices as if they were far away. She remembered her mother, long gone, and the way her mother used to say, "Hold your spine straight. No matter what happens, hold your spine straight." Myra had held onto those words like a tool. A tool you could use when everything else was taken. The broker began the bidding. Numbers rose quickly, tossed into the air like stones. Mara did not understand all the prices, but she knew one thing: none of it was fair. None of it was about her dreams or her feelings or the quiet life she had wanted. It was only about what she was worth to people who did not know her. Then the crowd shifted. Someone had arrived. Elias Mercer stepped into the square. He was tall, dressed in a dust-brown coat with a high collar, his hat pulled low. A rancher's hat, not a town hat. His boots were clean in a way that meant he had ridden in from outside the settlement and had not been standing around all day. People noticed him because he was not a familiar town face. He was known, yes, but known from a distance. Elias Mercer was the man with the big ranch beyond the dome's edge, the man who lived under open sky with terraforming towers humming on the horizon. He came into town rarely. When he did, he kept to himself. He did not smile, he did not talk much. He handled business quickly and left. Some people nodded at him, some turned away. A few whispered his name like it carried weight. Mara did not look at him, she did not look at anyone. But she could feel the change in the air, like a wind shifting before a storm. Elias stopped near the back of the crowd. His eyes moved from the broker to the contract chip, then to Mara. When he saw her face, something in him tightened. He had seen fear before. He had seen anger. He had seen people cry and collapse, but Mara's stillness was different. It was not calm. It was controlled. It was the kind of stillness a person wears when they have learned that showing pain only invites more pain. Elias' jaw tightened as the numbers climbed. The broker's voice was proud, pleased with the attention. Mara's father began to breathe easier. The higher the bid went, the more his shoulders relaxed, like money could fix the damage he had done. Elias watched him, then looked back at Mara. For a moment, the desert wind blew through the square. Dust lifted around boots. The twin suns were almost gone now, and the air carried that cold edge that came fast on Ardent 9. The highest bidder called out a number that made the crowd hum. Mara felt a strange emptiness spread through her chest. It was not panic. Panic takes energy. This was deeper than panic. It was the quiet feeling of a door closing. Then a voice cut through the noise. 100 credits above that. The square went silent. Mara's father turned so fast he almost stumbled. The broker blinked, surprised. Elias Mercer stood with one hand raised slightly, not dramatic, not loud, just steady. The crowd stared at him. Some people expected rich off-world traders to throw credits around, but Elias was not an off-world trader. He was a rancher, a man who worked his land and kept his life private. Whispers spread like sparks. He's bidding. The highest bidder frowned and raised the price again, trying to push Elias away. The broker's voice grew quick with excitement. The numbers climbed again. Elias did not blink. He raised the bid once more, the same calm increase like he was drawing a line no one else could cross. The other bidder hesitated. The crowd waited, hungry for drama. Then the bidder cursed under his breath and stepped back. The broker looked around. Any other bids? No one spoke. The broker brought the hammer down on the wooden table. Sold! The contract chip changed hands. Mara's father's face lit up like the suns had risen again. He moved to the broker with shaking hands, eager to collect his part of the deal. Mara did not move. Elias stepped forward through the crowd. He walked slowly, like he was careful not to frighten her and not to make the moment into a show. He stopped at the base of the platform and looked up at her. He did not smile, but his eyes were clear. Up close, Mara could see small lines near his eyes, the kind that came from squinting into bright sky and hard wind. She could see a scar near his jawline, pale and old. He held his coat open slightly and reached up with it, not touching her yet, waiting. Mara hesitated for the first time, not because she trusted him. She did not trust anyone, but because the way he waited made her feel like her choice mattered. Finally, she stepped down from the platform. Elias placed the coat around her shoulders, keeping his hands gentle and quick, then stepped back again. The coat smelled like desert air and leather and clean metal, like a life lived outdoors. "Are you hurt?" he asked. His voice was low, rough from dust and silence. Mara shook her head once. Elias nodded. That was all, no more questions, no pressure. Behind them, Mara's father took his credits and moved away fast, pretending not to notice the eyes on him. He did not say goodbye. He did not look back. Mara watched him go. She expected her chest to break open with grief. She expected anger. She expected tears. But what she felt was colder, like she had been set down in a new place and had to learn how to breathe again. Elias turned slightly, angling his body so he was not blocking her path, not trapping her. "We'll leave now," he said. "Where?" Mara asked. Her voice surprised her. It was quiet, almost unused. "My ranch," Elias replied. "It's far. You'll be safe there." Safe. The word felt strange, like a language she used to know. They walked away from the square together, moving past the trading hall, past the water office, toward the edge of town where the ground turned from packed dirt to open desert. Elias' ride waited near the fence line, a sturdy hover sled with thick runners for sand and rock. Supplies were strapped neatly to the back. Everything about it looked prepared, like he had come ready to carry someone home. Mara stopped near it. The stars were starting to show above the darkening sky. The terraforming towers far away blinked in the distance like slow, patient machines. Mara looked at Elias, really looked at him now. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you do that?" Elias did not answer right away. He looked out toward the desert, toward the open land where only the strong could live. Then he spoke, simple and steady. "Because no one should be traded like they don't matter." Mara swallowed. Elias climbed onto the driver's seat and offered her a hand, not pulling, not forcing, just offering. After a brief pause, Mara took it. His grip was warm and firm, like a rope tied to something solid. She climbed up beside him. The hoversled hummed to life, and the town lights faded behind them as they moved into the open desert. Cold wind rose. Stars multiplied. The twin suns were gone now, and the night of Ardent 9 stretched wide and endless. Mara pulled the coat tighter around her shoulders and stared ahead into the dark, where the ranch waited beyond the horizon. She did not know what kind of man Elias Mercer truly was, but for the first time in a long time, she felt something she barely recognized. Not happiness. Not peace, just a small, stubborn spark of possibility. and in the deep frontier night, that spark was enough to keep her going. The desert stretched endlessly beneath a sky filled with cold stars as Elias guided the hoversled across the open land. The town lights slowly disappeared behind them until only darkness remained. The engine hummed softly, steady and calm, like a heartbeat that never rushed. Myra sat beside him in silence. The coat around her shoulders felt heavy but warm. She held it close, unsure if she should feel comfort or fear. Everything had changed so quickly that her thoughts felt slow, as if they could not catch up with reality. The wind moved through her hair as they traveled across dunes and rocky plains. Strange glowing plants appeared in patches along the ground, lighting the path with soft silver colors. In the distance, tall terraforming towers blinked with blue lights, shaping the atmosphere little by little, turning this harsh world into something humans could survive. Elias did not speak much. He focused on driving, adjusting direction when the terrain shifted. Sometimes he checked a small screen on the dashboard that showed maps and weather patterns. Mara noticed how calm he seemed. Not cold, not distant, just quiet. She had known loud men all her life, men who filled space with anger, with demands, with noise meant to control others. Elias felt different, like someone who did not need to prove anything. After a long time, he finally spoke. "There's water in the pack behind you if you need it." His voice was gentle, almost careful. Mara turned slightly and found a small container tied securely to the sled. She hesitated, unsure if she should take it without permission. "You don't need to ask," Elias added quietly, as if he understood her thoughts. "You're not a guest you have to be afraid around." She opened the container slowly and drank. The water was cool and clean. She had not realized how thirsty she was until that moment. "Thank you," she said. He nodded once. They rode in silence again. Hours passed and the desert changed. The dunes grew smaller, replaced by flat stretches of red earth and fields of tall silver grass that moved like waves under the night wind. Strange animal calls echoed in the distance, low, rumbling sounds that carried far. Finally, lights appeared ahead, not bright like a city, but steady and warm. Elias slowed the hoversled. "That's home," he said. The ranch stood wide and open beneath the stars. Several long buildings formed a loose circle around a central house. Solar panels angled toward the sky. Fences made of glowing energy lines marked boundaries across the land. Small drones floated slowly, scanning the area with quiet beeps. Mara stared. She had expected something rough, maybe broken. Instead, the ranch felt strong and alive, built with care. Elias parked the sled near the main house and climbed down first. He walked around and offered his hand again. She stepped down carefully. The ground felt different here, firm, safe, not crowded by strangers. He picked up a small lantern and led her inside. The house smelled like wood, clean metal, and something warm cooking earlier in the day. The lights turned on automatically as they entered, revealing simple furniture, neat shelves, and wide windows that looked out over the land. Nothing felt fancy, but everything felt honest. "You can choose any room on the right side," Elias said. "They're clean." Mara nodded slowly, unsure what to say. He placed a small device on the table. "If you need anything during the night, press this. It connects to my room." She blinked. "You trust me?" Elias looked slightly surprised by the question. "You're not a prisoner," he said quietly. The words settled into her mind like seeds. Not a prisoner. She walked down the hallway and opened one of the doors. Inside was a simple room, a bed, a desk, a small shelf, and a window showing the open land outside. The bed had fresh sheets. The air smelled clean. Mara sat down slowly. For a long moment she did nothing. No shouting, no footsteps coming to check on her, no orders, only silence. She lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Her body finally allowed itself to relax, and exhaustion rushed through her like a heavy wave. She fell asleep almost instantly. Morning came with soft light and the sound of distant animals. Myra opened her eyes slowly, unsure where she was. Then memory returned. The auction, the ride, the ranch. She sat up quickly and looked around. Everything was still calm. Outside the window, the silver grass moved under the wind, shining in the sunlight. She dressed and stepped into the hallway. The smell of cooking drifted through the house. Elias stood in the kitchen, preparing food quietly. He did not look surprised to see her. "Morning," he said. She hesitated. "Morning." He placed a plate on the table. Simple food, bread, eggs, fruit grown in hydro trays. "You don't have to work," he said without turning around. "Today you rest." She nodded but felt unsure what resting meant. Rest had never been part of her life. After eating, she followed him outside. The ranch looked even bigger in daylight. Automated gates opened and closed slowly. Large animals moved in the distance, genetically adapted cattle with thick fur and long legs made for desert travel. Elias handed her a pair of gloves. "If you want to walk with me, you can," he said. She took the gloves carefully. They walked together along a fence line. He showed her how the energy barriers worked, how the solar panels tracked the suns, how the drones checked for damage. He explained things simply without making her feel small for asking questions. Hours passed, and Mara found herself talking more than she expected. Small questions at first. Then stories about the town, about learning to repair machines as a child, about watching ships land and dreaming of leaving. Elias listened without interrupting. Sometimes he shared small pieces of his own past. He spoke of his wife briefly and his son, but his voice grew quieter when he mentioned them. Mara noticed he did not avoid the memories, but he carried them carefully, like fragile glass. As the day ended, they sat on a wooden bench outside the house. The twin suns lowered slowly, painting the sky with deep colors. Mara felt strange, safe. The word returned again, slowly becoming real. She looked at Elias. "You didn't ask my name yesterday," she said. He nodded. "I thought you would tell me when you were ready." She felt warmth rise in her chest. "It's Mara," she said softly. He gave a small nod. "Mara." The way he said it felt respectful, like he was accepting something important. Night came again, and the ranch lights glowed gently against the dark. Mara realized that for the first time in years, she did not feel like she was waiting for something bad to happen. Instead, she felt like she was standing at the beginning of something new. And as the stars appeared above them, she allowed herself to believe that maybe this quiet ranch under alien skies could become more than just a place to stay. Maybe it could become home. The days at the ranch began to form a gentle rhythm, like the steady movement of wind through the silver grass. Myra woke early each morning to the soft glow of twin suns rising over the horizon. The air always felt fresh, carrying the scent of warm sand and growing plants shaped by terraforming machines. Life here was different from the crowded settlement. There were no loud voices, no constant pressure, no feeling that she had to stay invisible just to avoid trouble. Instead, there was space, open land stretching farther than she could see. Elias moved through his work quietly and with purpose. He checked the fences, guided the herd across safe grazing areas, and repaired machines that kept the ranch running. Sometimes he worked alone for hours, but he never left her feeling ignored. He simply allowed her to join when she wished. Myra started helping more each day. At first, she followed him carefully, watching how he handled tools and how he spoke to the animals in calm, low tones. The ranch creatures responded to his voice, moving slowly instead of panicking. One afternoon, he handed her a small control device. "Try guiding them," he said. She hesitated. "What if I mess up?" "Then we fix it," he replied simply. His answer made her smile slightly. She stepped forward, heart beating faster, and followed his instructions. The herd shifted direction slowly, moving across the field toward fresh grazing zones. When they responded correctly, she felt a small spark of pride rise inside her. Elias noticed but did not make a big show of it. He only nodded once. "You learn fast," he said. The words stayed with her for the rest of the day. That night, while sitting outside beneath the stars, Mara realized she had laughed earlier without thinking. The sound had surprised her. She had not laughed freely in a long time, but peace on the frontier never lasted forever. The change came quietly. A distant engine sound echoed across the desert, growing louder until a transport cruiser appeared in the sky. Its lights flashed as it descended toward the ranch, sending waves through the tall grass. Mara felt her stomach tighten. Visitors were rare. Elias watched the ship land with a calm expression, but she noticed his posture shift slightly, becoming more alert. 3 figures stepped down from the cruiser. They wore clean uniforms, polished boots untouched by dust. Official badges shone on their chests. Settlement authority. Mara's hands went cold. The lead officer approached slowly, scanning the ranch with sharp eyes. "Elias Mercer?" he asked. Elias nodded once. "We're here regarding a legal dispute," the officer continued, holding up a digital tablet. Mara's breath caught. The officer turned the screen so they could see. A document glowed on it, legal codes, signatures, and a familiar name. "Her father, he has filed a challenge against the guardianship transfer," the officer said. He claims the agreement was incomplete and requests renegotiation. The words hit her like a sudden storm. For a moment, the world felt unsteady again. She had known deep down that the past might return, but she had not expected it so soon. Elias stepped slightly closer to her, not touching but standing beside her like a shield. "What is required?" he asked calmly. The officer adjusted his stance. "Without formal adoption status recognized by colonial law, guardianship may be reconsidered." Mara felt panic rise in her chest. Adoption. The word felt heavy. She looked at Elias quickly, searching for anger or frustration, but his expression remained steady. He turned toward the house and walked inside without rushing. Mara watched him go, unsure what he planned to do. The officers waited silently. Minutes later, Elias returned holding a small tablet. He handed it to the lead officer. "My late wife and I applied for foster guardianship years ago," he said quietly. "The authorization remains active." The officer scanned the information, eyebrows lifting slightly. "This could support a permanent transfer," he said. Elias nodded once, then looked at Mara. His voice softened. "If she wants it." The words felt powerful. No one had ever asked what she wanted in a moment like this. The officer turned toward her. "Miss, do you wish to remain here under Elias Mercer's legal guardianship?" Mara's thoughts raced. She remembered the platform in the settlement square, the feeling of being watched like she was an object, the way her father had walked away without turning back. Then she remembered the quiet mornings at the ranch, the calm voice that never demanded. The way Elias always waited for her choice. Her fear slowly transformed into something stronger. She lifted her head. "Yes," she said clearly. The officer nodded and began updating the documents. "Then the request for renegotiation is denied," he said. "Legal guardianship stands." The tension in Mara's chest eased, though her hands still trembled slightly. The officers finished their work quickly. Before leaving, the lead officer paused. "You are fortunate," he said to Mara, not unkindly. She nodded but did not reply. When the cruiser lifted into the sky and disappeared, the ranch fell silent again. Mara released a breath she did not know she had been holding. Elias turned toward her. "You all right?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I thought," she began, but the words faded. "That he would take you back," Elias finished gently. She swallowed and nodded again. He looked toward the horizon. "No one decides your life without your voice," he said. The statement felt simple but powerful. They stood together in silence as the suns lowered. Later that evening, they sat at the kitchen table. Elias placed a document between them. "There's another option," he said quietly, "if you want it." She looked at the screen, legal name adoption, her heart beat faster. He raised a hand slightly. "Only if you choose." "Nothing changes unless you want it to." Mara stared at the words for a long time. A new name meant a new beginning. It meant closing a chapter filled with pain and stepping into something unknown. She looked at Elias. His expression held no pressure, only patience. "I would like that," she said softly. He nodded once, a small smile touching his face for the first time. Outside, the stars appeared slowly, watching over the ranch. And as Mara sat there, she realized that her story was no longer controlled by fear or debt. She had chosen. And that choice made all the difference. Morning light spread slowly across the ranch, turning the silver grass into waves of shining color. The twin suns rose higher and higher, warming the land and bringing life to everything they touched. The quiet hum of machines mixed with the distant calls of grazing animals, creating a peaceful rhythm that felt natural now. Myra stood on the porch of the main house, watching the horizon. Only a few months had passed since the day she arrived, but it felt like another lifetime. The fear that once followed her everywhere had softened. It had not completely disappeared, some memories never truly left, but it no longer controlled her thoughts. She held a small digital tablet in her hands. The adoption approval had arrived that morning. Official confirmation from the Colonial Registry. Her name had been updated, Mara Mercer. She read the words again, slowly letting them settle into her heart. The new name did not feel heavy or forced. It felt like something offered freely, something she had chosen. Behind her, the door opened quietly. Elias stepped onto the porch, carrying 2 cups of warm tea. He handed one to her without speaking. She accepted it with a small smile. He leaned against the railing, looking out over the ranch. "Well," he said gently, "it's official." She nodded, "Yes." They stood together in comfortable silence. The wind moved softly across the fields, carrying the scent of growing plants and clean air. Drones drifted slowly above the fences, checking energy levels and scanning for damage. Everything felt steady. After a while, Mara spoke. "I never thought I would choose a new name," she said. Elias listened without interrupting. "It feels different," she continued. "Not like losing who I was, more like becoming someone new." He nodded slowly. "That's how beginnings work," he said. She glanced at him, surprised by the softness in his voice. They finished their tea and began the day's work. Life at the ranch continued as always, but something inside Mara had changed. She moved with more confidence now, guiding the animals across the grazing zones and adjusting the solar panels when the angle of the suns shifted. She had learned quickly, but more importantly, she had begun to believe in her own abilities. Later that afternoon, a small cargo ship appeared in the distance, approaching slowly. Mara felt a brief flash of worry. Visitors had brought trouble before, but Elias remained calm. "It's probably a supply delivery," he said. The ship landed near the outer fence, releasing a cloud of dust. A familiar trader stepped out, carrying crates filled with tools and fresh equipment. As they unloaded supplies, the trader glanced at Mara. "Didn't expect to see you running this place already," he said with a friendly grin. She smiled politely. "I'm learning," she replied. The trader nodded approvingly. "Good place for that," he said, then turned to Elias. "Word spreading in town, you know." People talking about the ranch again. Elias only shrugged slightly, clearly uninterested in gossip, but Mara felt curious. "What are they saying?" she asked. The trader chuckled. "They say the quiet widower isn't so quiet anymore," he replied, "and that he gave someone a second chance." Mara felt warmth rise in her chest. After the trader left, she and Elias finished organizing the supplies. As the suns began to set, they walked toward the far edge of the property where the land dropped into a wide valley filled with glowing plants. They sat on a wooden bench overlooking the view. The sky shifted from gold to deep purple, stars appearing one by one. Mara held the tablet again, staring at her new name. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. Elias looked at her, confused. "Regret what? Choosing to bring me here?" He shook his head immediately. "No." His answer was firm but gentle. "I thought my life was finished after I lost my family," he continued after a moment. "I stopped looking forward to anything. The ranch was just work, just survival." He paused, searching for the right words. "You changed that." Mara felt her throat tighten slightly. "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. "You did," he replied. "You reminded me that life keeps moving." They sat together, watching the stars. The silence between them felt warm, not empty. As night settled fully over the ranch, small lights turned on automatically along the fences, glowing softly in the darkness. The herd rested peacefully nearby, and the distant terraforming towers blinked like slow-moving stars. Mara realized she no longer felt like an outsider here. She knew the sounds of the wind. She knew the patterns of the animals. She knew where the tools were kept and how the machines worked. More importantly, she knew she belonged. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch continued to grow stronger. Mara began taking remote classes through the colony network, learning about agriculture systems and law. She wanted to understand more about the world, not just survive in it. Elias supported her quietly, helping when she asked but never pushing. One evening, while repairing a broken fence together, she laughed at something small, a drone that kept circling them as if curious. The sound of her laughter carried across the field. Elias paused, listening. He realized that the ranch had not felt this alive in years. Later that night, they stood outside the house again, watching the sky. A meteor streaked across the darkness, leaving a trail of light behind. Mara smiled. "When I first arrived," she said, "I thought I would just stay until I could leave." Elias nodded slowly. "And now?" he asked. She looked around at the land at the house at him. "Now I don't feel like I need to run anymore." The words felt simple but powerful. Elias gave a small, quiet smile. The desert wind moved gently around them, carrying the promise of another day. Far away, new settlers arrived on Ardent 9, searching for hope on a difficult world. Some would struggle, some would fail. But stories spread quickly across frontier colonies, and one story traveled from town to town. A story about a man who chose kindness when no one expected it, and a girl who chose her own future. Under the wide alien sky, the ranch became more than just a place of work. It became a home built not from obligation, but from trust. Myra Mercer stood beside Elias, watching the stars, knowing that her life was finally her own. And in that quiet moment beneath endless skies, both of them understood that sometimes the strongest families were not born, they were chosen.